The war between Donald Trump and Kier Starmer has started, but this isn't a video about personalities. This is a video about constitutionalism. Don't worry too much. This is about how democratic nations need to stop the process of turning absolutely everything into a dodgy court battle between judges appointed by dictators. And this is why the International Criminal Court needs to be abolished. Hello everyone. This is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all of my videos as soon as they are released. Look, mistakes were made at the end of the Second World War. One of them was, I don't know, you will never see this, but in old movie reels, the British, American, Canadian and Commonwealth forces were called the United Nations. We don't use that phrase now because they created an international body in New York called the UN in order to bring the world together after the failure of the League of Nations, which was an earlier attempt at bringing countries together in a forum. Okay, now I've talked plenty of times about the UN. Let me now talk a little bit about the International Criminal Court. Well, we were all brought up, I think, to see the Nuremberg and Tokyo trials, though probably very few of you learned about the Tokyo trials, certainly I didn't. But most of us saw the Nuremberg trials as an important step forward. And that concept was this. It was a concept the Americans brought in, which was rather than invade a country and simply kill their leaders, what you were going to do instead, you were going to create something, this concept of genocide. You were going to create this concept of a level of behaviour by an elected government or a government of a country that was so horrendous that actually in of itself you should be guilty of a crime. Now, everything I've just said sounds eminently sensible. And what happened was there was an argument, bluntly, between the Russians and the Americans. What Stalin said was, give me all the leaders of the Nazi regime and I will stick them in Siberia for 50 years, and any of them that are still alive after 5 years, you know, I'm happy to worry about then. We said, because we went along with the American plan, there ought to be trials for these people. Now, I can understand why that happened, right? And I think that none of us have ever said the Nuremberg trials were a mistake. But I do think that Stalin's argument saying this was a spoil of war to off with your opponents, I think probably was quite a sensible comment in the context of what we have now. Once again, this video is about Tony Blair, yawn, 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 I know, but these North London lawyers who have jumped on for many years this idea of international law, this idea of a global settlement, this idea of the international law was invented, in my view, in about 1975 in the Inns of Court by a group of lawyers. You know, people like, not exactly, but people like Kier Starmer, people like Tony Blair, people like Richard Harmer, and people like that, Harmer, I don't know what his name is. I'd love it if the Attorney General of the United Kingdom, who'd done so much to damage the United Kingdom, who'd done so much to bring terrorists back to the United Kingdom, was actually called Richard Harmer, but I think it is Harmer. Okay, anyway, let me tell you what has happened now. This idea of an international criminal court once again sounds sensible. And what happened was very simple. Under Blair and all the rest of them, Clinton, they said, right, what we're going to say is, if there is another genocide like in Rwanda, then we need to be able to put people on trial. So if your local courts in your country are not willing to try people for these most horrendous incidents that have taken place, and by the way, this is not a gratuitous video, there won't be any anything like that in it, but if your country will not put people on trial, if Bosnia won't put people on trial, if Serbia won't put people on trial, if Rwanda won't put people on trial, then what will happen is there will be an international criminal court to do it. And everybody thought, what a great idea. Or so you were told by the BBC. Actually, many people thought it was a truly dreadful idea. And the reason why they said it was a truly dreadful idea was the American Senate turned around and said, hang on a second, what's going to happen here is very simply this. All of these courts will be dominated by judges from the third world, will be dominated by people appointed by dictators. I mean, we'll appoint judges based on, you know, who is the best lawyer, whatever. What, is Azerbaijan going to do that? and I don't mean to be rude specifically to Azerbaijan, but let's be clear, you know, I would suspect the Belarusian judge is not exactly the most fair-minded person in the history of global legal affairs. So what the Americans said was this: no, 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 no. What's going to happen is that we in the West, who have proper judicial systems, when we fail to prosecute people who've done nothing wrong, the International Criminal Court will step in. Remember what I just said? That if your local legal system does not prosecute people guilty of these war crimes, then the International Criminal Court will step in. And so think about that. So now what happens is the Americans do not think they've done anything wrong, but there is a whole court full of Iranians, full of Azeris, full of Chinese, full of people from the former Soviet Union who run dodgy administrations, full of African dictators' grandsons who only got their degree in politics from the LSE because they bribed somebody to give it to them. Full of those people. And Grandad phones up and says, prosecute Colin Powell. Grandad phones up and says, prosecute David Cameron. And of course, that is precisely what's happened. The ICC is supposed to only have jurisdiction over the countries that actually signed the treaty. Well, that was thrown out fairly recently. They issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant because, get this, Palestine had signed up even though it wasn't a country. Amazing. But the International Criminal Court said that even though Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant had not set foot into Gaza, Gaza was legally part of Israeli territory. I know it's a bit weird, but it is legally part of it. So they'd not set foot in the territory. They literally didn't sign up to the treaty anyway, but because a country that didn't exist signed up, Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu have had arrest warrants issued for them. That is precisely what the International Criminal Court was always going to do. And the reason why I say that this is a battle between Trump and Starmer is very simply this. Trump, obviously, as you know, doesn't need to pull out of the International Criminal Court. He can't join it. Sorry, did you think I said he won't join it? He can't join it. The American Constitution says that you can only sign a treaty as president if 2/3 of the Senate agree, and there is no way under any circumstances that 2/3 of the Senate of the United States of America would ever agree to a treaty like that. That's why they didn't get it through under Bill Clinton. And so now, where are we up to? Well, what Trump has done is he has sanctioned members of the International Criminal Court. And what does he sanction them for? And this is the important bit. Using their powers to push the political agendas of the countries that appointed them. Yes, that's right. The suggestion that was made by the United States Senate, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is precisely what took place. Dodgy dictators appointed their friends, relatives, and their clients. Mostly those dodgy dictators have got there as a result of the influence of the People's Republic of China. And so the court now is a way of enforcing the power of China across the world, and we are going along with it. Did you see Kier Starmer and his government, our government, come out and support the International Criminal Court? Well, I will say a future Conservative government, a future Reform government, a future UKIP government needs to say that the International Criminal Court is part of the global axis of evil, along with the United Nations. And I think Donald Trump is absolutely right. Not just to say we're not being part of this, but to say it's actively damaging to the world. Until next time, goodbye.